Understanding the legal landscape requires a brief look back. How did we get to the legal landscape we're in? So looking back on media coverage of the so-called cocaine epidemic, crack epidemic, there were stories over and over and over again, like the one in Time magazine in 1990, crack kids, their mothers use drugs and their children suffer. So you have a narrative that is set up about mothers who are guilty and children who are innocent, and you see the innocent victims. And as the story in the New York Times and the Time magazine got more detailed, and by the time you get to the actual story, it's about how these children are going to be in school with your children, taking away important public resources. Do you notice what happens to the skin color of the kid? Right? As it becomes more menacing, the skin color gets darker. There is a narrative here not only about drugs, it's about race, it's about maternal responsibility and blame. Coverage around the crack epidemic, or so-called crack epidemic, because it wasn't really one, it wasn't widespread everywhere, was everywhere. The Rolling Stones, babies born to crack-addicted mothers are like no others, brain damaged in ways yet unknown. They're oblivious to any infection. How do we care for these babies? And what color is the baby pictured in this story? Color? Black, absolutely. And what kind of a woman would give birth, would take a drug knowing it did all of these things? She must be a really horrible person. This is really the legacy of slavery that continues to play out in our country. In order to somehow rationalize the ability to take babies away from enslaved black women, you have to convince yourself on some level that they don't really care about their babies. This is a narrative that gets played over and over again, so that why would anybody believe that there was a group of any mothers who were willing to do these things to their babies? And you have this story said very explicitly. Who's the worst threat to children? Mom herself. This is an ad that was up just a few years ago by anti-choice organizations, giant billboards that say the most dangerous place for an African American is in the womb. Not in the United States, not in Congress, but research is done that says there's no such thing as crack babies. The original studies by Ira Chasnoff were based on 24 case studies. In fact, there is no specific set of harms that can be linked to prenatal exposure to cocaine or cocaine in its smokable form crack. These are just babies with certain exposures. So eventually, the New York Times in 2009 runs a story, the epidemic that wasn't. It's in the health pages, not the front page. And the photo that goes with it still shows a picture. It says, treating a baby addicted to cocaine. You have a version of the retraction, the correction in the Washington Post. But watch what happens. So the story is many crack babies successful, damage reports exaggerated. Okay, what color is the boy who wasn't damaged? So this is a racial story that keeps coming over and over again. And it's not to say that white people, and particularly rural white women, aren't taken into this and harmed by it. But it helps to understand how much of this is a legacy of slavery, of Jim Crow, of the new Jim Crow, and how subtly, in ways that we may not normally be aware of, it gets reinforced and replayed. So here's the Washington Post version. It says successful, damage reports are exaggerated. They talk about some of the actual peer-reviewed, evidence-based research saying that there just really isn't a set of things that we can call that can be blame on prenatal exposure to cocaine syndrome. We look at when a woman uses drugs, the result of which is a stillbirth, a baby born with significant disabilities, all the children needing help, and it happens to be a fertility drug taken by a white Christian woman who is opposed to abortion. She gets on the cover of Good Housekeeping, and her babies are called Little Miracles. But we did a study of arrests of women in relationship to their pregnancies and other deprivations. of liberty between 1973 and 2005, and we were able to document, solid evidence of over 413 cases in 44 states and the District of Columbia. And that was until 2005. Our research showed that the targets of arrest are overwhelmingly low-income women. 52% are African. If you want to destroy, for example, black communities, you put the men in jail for drug charges, and you tell the women, we're going to take your baby away if you don't do what we say.